What would you do if you came home early one night, only to hear the desperate cries of your own children left outside, shivering in the pouring rain? A father who thought he had finally rebuilt his life, after tragedy walked into the most heart-wrenching betrayal he could ever imagine. This is not just a story of heartbreak. It is a story of resilience, of choices, and of the unbreakable bond between a father and his children. But before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. I always love seeing our global family gathered here. The first thing Ikenna heard was not thunder. It was the thin, ribboned cry of a child, then a second, then a third braided through the hiss of rain, like a plea trying to stay alive. He froze at the gate, suitcase handle cold under his fingers, rain needling the back of his neck. The compound lights flickered. Somewhere in the dark, a generator coughed. And there, under the dripping awning beside the front door, 3 carriers sat in a crooked row, 3 tiny faces wet with rain, 3 mouths open, chins trembling, eyes swollen from crying. Chidera, Chima, Chisum, he said one name with each gasp, as if calling them back from a cliff. No one answered from inside the house. The bolt on the door was still drawn from within. He dropped the suitcase and ran. Ikenna's flight had been canceled at the last minute. A storm had swallowed the city earlier than forecast. He'd texted his wife Boma on the drive from the airport. Flight canceled. Coming home tonight instead. Save me leftover stew? 2 great ticks, no reply. He had married Boma 8 months after the funeral, after enough tears had scoured his days into something like a routine. Work, bottles, lullabies, the unfathomable silence where his first wife, Amara, used to laugh. The triplets were Amara's last gift to him and the world, a wild, impossible blessing she didn't survive to see. Boma had walked into their lives with careful steps, a tidy smile and a promise to learn. "We'll be a team," she'd said, touching the soft spot on Chidera's head like it was made of glass. "You're not carrying this alone." He wanted to believe her. He did believe her. He had to. Now kneeling in the rain, he unclipped straps with shaking fingers and pressed tiny bodies to his chest. They were cold through their onesies. Their hair stuck to their foreheads. He should have felt only fear, a razor line of panic, but what rose up first was disbelief. Boma would never. She couldn't. There had to be a reason, a misunderstanding, a moment where the world organized itself back into sense. He kicked the door. "Boma!" A neighbor's curtain stirred but did not open. He kicked again, harder, then remembered the spare key in the flower pot that had never hosted a flower. The lock turned and the door swung wide to a house that smelled of lemon cleaner and something else, emptiness. Maybe, or leaving. No lights, no footsteps. Only the generator's distant cough and the rain collapsing on the roof. He laid the triplets on the living room rug, snatched a blanket from the couch, and began the awkward ballet of warming 3 babies with 2 hands. He stripped off his jacket, wrapped it around Chisum, tucked Chima inside the blanket against his skin, and held Chidera under the beam of the standing fan. He tilted low and warm a trick he and Amara learned during those first panicked nights when fevers and chills ran to the beat of their fear. "Easy," he whispered, voice breaking as if it belonged to a stranger. "Daddy's here. Daddy's here." Their cries softened to hiccups, to whimpers, to the soft, hot sniffs of babies on the far side of catastrophe. He warmed their feet in his palms. He counted their breaths. He kissed 3 damp crowns and told the dark they would live. They would live. They would live. Only when the shivering faded did he stand to find his wife. Boma's shoes were gone from the rack. Her favorite coral scarf was missing from the hook. The vanity drawer where she kept her lip gloss was an empty rectangle. On the dining table lay the feeding ledger, time, ounces, diaper color neatly filled through the afternoon, and then a hard, empty line over the evening columns. A wet circle from a cup stained the wood like someone had meant to clean it and then didn't. There was also a note. Not even a real note, 3 lines scribbled on the back of a grocery list. "I can't do this. I told you it was too much. Don't call me." His hands shook so much the paper blurred. He put it down before it tore. He dialed. Her number went straight to voicemail. He tried again, then again, measuring each ring against the steady in and out of his babies, breathing from the rug. He called Ngozi, the day nanny. She answered on the 3rd ring, groggy and wary. "Sir?" "Ngozi, did you leave early?" "Where is Boma?" A pause so long he thought the line had died. "Madam sent me away at 4, she said slowly. She said her friend was coming to help. she said. It was enough. Enough what? But Ngozi had no answer. Only apologies that fell on him like rain, even though none of this was her fault. He wanted to rage. He wanted to run out into the storm and drag the city by the scruff until it spat, Boma out at his feet. Instead, he counted again. 3 warm bodies, 3 steady breaths, 3 children whose entire world began and ended in the square of a living room, lit by a single stubborn bulb. He texted the neighbor he trusted most, Ikenna, the widow upstairs who had slipped him pans of jollof during Amara's funeral days. No questions asked. "Emergency, can you come downstairs?" She arrived in a wrapper and slippers, face already set to the business of survival. "What happened?" He showed her the note. Ikenna did not gasp. She did not curse. She assessed the babies, kissed each tiny forehead, and said, "Let's feed them. Warm them, then you go find her. If she can leave 3 children in the rain, she is not safe tonight. Not for herself. Not for anyone. Ikenna, go." And just like that, the world spun again, slowly, as if reluctant, into its new shape. Ikenna boiled water. Ikenna warmed bottles. He tucked the note into his wallet like a splinter. On the drive to the city center, wipers squeaking, Ikenna saw the past few months flicker through the rain-smeared windshield like a film, projected crooked on a wall. Boma had learned the rhythms of the house quickly, when to sterilize bottles, which lullaby calmed Chima fastest, how to tilt the bottle so Chidera didn't swallow air. She posted photos labeled, "My Little Miracles," fingers forming a heart over 3 fuzzy heads. But now he heard the edges in things she'd said. "I didn't marry to be a nanny forever. Do they always cry this much? When will we have our life?" He had responded with plans to date nights once they were older. A weekend away next year. A second helper believing that reassurance is the same as repair. He missed the days when Amara had laughed the house into warmth. He missed having an adult who would meet him in the kitchen at midnight, breath smelling faintly of toothpaste and stew, and say, "It's all madness, but we're doing it together." Perhaps Boma missed her own dreams too, the bright, unapologetic ones she'd had before she chose a widower with 3 newborns. Perhaps she thought she could carry them, then found the load. Heavier than the market glance had promised. Still, to set children in the rain? He pushed the thought away. Answer first, anger later. He drove to the places he knew she disliked and the ones she loved, her salon, the cafe where they'd first held hands, the waterfront where she once said the lagoon wind made her feel clean. He scanned for her scarf among umbrella discs. He practiced questions in his head because he knew this night would live in his mouth forever. At a traffic light, he called her best friend, Tene. On the 4th ring, Tene picked up, breathless. "Ikenna?" "She left," he said in the flat tone of someone narrating a stranger's life, with a note. "Do you know where she might go?" A rustle, a door closing. "I told her to come to my place," Tene said. "I told her to wait for me. She wouldn't answer when I went to the restroom, and when I came back, she was gone." "You're with her?" "I was. She's been unraveling. Not sleeping. Scrolling at 3 a.m. These influencers talk about choosing yourself, like it's a clean thing. She said the babies are a storm that never ends. I didn't know it had gotten this far." The light turned green, horns scolding him through the rain. He turned the car toward Tenny's street. "If she calls you," he said, "tell her I'm not angry. Tell her to tell me where she is." He did not argue. He did not hold her. He sent a text to Ikenna. "Found her. Coming home at 30. Baby's okay?" The reply came back with a photo of 3 sleeping faces, lips parted, lashes dark on cheeks. He felt something unwind in his chest and settled again around the old promise he had made in a delivery ward that smelled of antiseptic and loss. "I will keep you safe, whatever it costs me." The report was clinical date, time, conditions observed, not preserved. Tene arrived and folded Boma into a hug that was more restraint than comfort. Boma's mother took her daughter home. A psychiatrist's appointment was booked. Words like mood disorder, post-traumatic stress, unresolved grief, and maladaptive coping entered the chat, each of them true in their way, and none of them absolving what had happened beneath that awning. Back at the apartment, the generator's cough had smoothed into a steady hum. Ikenna had dried the carriers. The babies slept in a heap that looked like a shared dream. Ikenna watched them the way a sentry watches a boarder. "You eat," Ikenna said, setting a plate in front of him that he didn't remember her cooking. He ate because the body is unromantic in its needs. He slept on the floor because his legs gave out and because he wanted his chest to be the first wall the world would hit if it tried anything else tonight. Morning light found the room soft and new like the skin under a scab. The triplets woke, furious at the indignity of hunger, and he laughed because fury meant life. He called the office, leave requested, approved, no explanations offered. He called a second nanny. References checked, salary doubled, start today. He called his parents, yes, he was fine. No. He did not need to send the children to the village. Yes, he would come on Sunday anyway, so that his mother could count fingers and toes with her own hands. He boxed Boma's clothes with steady motions and labeled the cartons with a black marker. Boma returned when ready. He left the cartons by the door. He did not know what ready meant. He only knew that the house needed to be a place where 3 very small people could learn to trust the world again, and a man in immense love with them could relearn the parts of himself that had gone silent under the weight of trying to be 3 parents at once. People who had not called in months arrived with gifts and opinions. Forgive. She is young. Forget. She is cruel. Try again when the babies are older. Don't you dare! He smiled at the door and let their words pass through the house like the weather. He learned to sleep in 2-hour islands and to speak softly even when he wanted to roar. He learned that Chidra slept best with a doll tucked in elegantly under her arm, that Chisholm liked to be sung to even if he sang off-key, that Chima disliked socks in any climate and would remove them with an air of protest that was comic and absolute. He also learned that love could be divided by 3 without diminishing, like a candle flame that lights other candles and stays just as bright. Weeks later, in a small office with a green plant that looked tired of false hopes, Boma said, "I'm sorry," in a voice that made the therapist glance at his pen before he wrote it down. She was taking her medicine, showing up to sessions, acknowledging the shame that hangs like a wet coat over certain kinds of failure. It was a beginning for her, perhaps. It was not an invitation for him. "I believe you," he said, and he did. "I also believe in what our children deserve." She nodded as if she had expected nothing else. "They deserve a mother," she tried. "They deserve a world where adults don't put them in the rain to test the weather of their love," he said, and though his voice was gentle, the line afterward was final. Papers would be filed. A kind of marriage would end so that another kind, the one between a father and 3 small lives, could continue without the drag of fear. On a night when the heat finally broke and the city smelled like wet earth and diesel, Ikenna stood at the window with all 3 children asleep, across his chest, and wrote a letter in his head. He would someday write on paper, "My children." That night, the rain sounded like 1,000 tired feet. I came home early by accident, or maybe by grace, and found you trying to breathe under a sky that does not always make sense. I picked you up. That's the whole story, really. I picked you up and we came inside, and I learned again the only lesson that matters. Love is what we do, not what we say we feel. One day you will hear versions of this story that make it neater than it was. Don't believe them. Nothing about love is neat. Your mother, Amara, gave you to me at the cost of her own life. The woman I married after her was not big enough to carry what we asked her to. Some people will tell you this makes her a monster. Others will tell you it makes her a victim. I will tell you it makes her a person who made a terrible choice. We can hold all 3 truths at once without letting go of the first. Truth, you were never to blame. If I did anything right that night, it was to listen to your crying as if it were the only sound that mattered. If I do anything right for the rest of my life, it will be to keep listening. Your father. He did not know if he would ever show them the letter. He only knew it was true. There are days, months later, when the triplets fill the house with a chaos that is gloriously ordinary spilled cereal, a crayon mural on the wall, a sock stuffed into the DVD player with the solemn explanation, "It's sleeping there." There are nights when he falls into bed and dreams of rain, wakes holding the air like he's catching something falling. He keeps the carriers by the door, cleaned and folded, not as a shrine but as a reminder that the future is a thing you carry every day, awkward, heavy, occasionally biting your shoulder, and not a photograph of what you thought you could handle. Amina visits with stories and stew. Ngozi clucks at his attempts at plaiting hair. Tene sends a message sometimes. She's working. She's stable. He replies with a thumb, which is the shape of a boundary in the era of phones. On a bright morning that smells like mangoes and soap, The triplets stand at the window and watch a new storm gather in the distance. All three pressed to the glass, their breaths making fog flowers on the pane. "Rain," Chisholm announces. "Inside," Ikenna says and scoops them up. "Always inside." And they laugh, as if the word means dance, as if the world were something you could keep between your arms and your heart, warm and unafraid, as if the most important promises can be kept with a door latch and a light left on. What do you think? Was she simply overwhelmed, or was this an unforgivable act of cruelty? Should he ever forgive her, or was walking away the only answer? Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly want to hear your perspective. And if this story touched you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next gripping story. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, sometimes the storms of life reveal who truly stands with us and who leaves us in the rain.